Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Critical Moves. I'm your host today, Jack, and today I'm joined again by Adam.
Hello everyone. Hello.
Hello, Adam. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. I'm feeling great. And you?
I'm feeling pretty good. Today, we decided to take all of our energy between the two of us as two of the most energetic people here at Critical Moves and put it into a episode for everybody on virtual economies. That big virtual economies episode that we needed to do.
So really interesting topic to speak when we are high energy people at this point. So
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more exciting than talking about numbers and math and the
yeah,
economy, right?
yes, exactly.
It's a big part of strategy games. And the thing that I think is the most interesting about economies, personally, Adam, is that the economy works no matter the scale. So you play some games. I was thinking about this a lot leading up to the episode, but like when you play Stellaris, which you know we have to talk about it every episode, you spend thousands and
Sure.
thousands of energy credits for single purchases sometimes. And when you go over to the rest of Paradox's library and you go into something like Crusader Kings, you're only making like 1 or 2 gold a month sometimes. So you're spending 90 gold a month, which is a few years of saving for you. And the economy works to that scale because it's just priced appropriately. It's based on supply and demand of its economy. And similarly with Victoria, that's probably the best. I know we talked about it recently a few times in different episodes, but it's probably the best example of supply and demand actually changing the cost of the things that you're buying because that game is purposefully an economic simulator. So, Adam, I wanted to jump over to you. Do you have any memories, any at all, of a particular strategy game with an economy that you enjoyed? Like something where you worked with the numbers?
Victoria free, of course.
Okay.
Like you already mentioned it, but in my opinion, it's one of the best simulated economy in strategy games. In strategy games, this is important because probably there's this one viewer who would say, "No, you haven't played this game, and this is really great economy." Yeah, sure, I agree with it. But when it comes to simulating selling stuff, buying stuff, the supply, need, for example, politics that are associated with often with economy, yes, geopolitics, the minerals, placement on the map, and things that are available to you, the logistics. There's nothing better than Victoria Free by miles. And I don't know. Maybe there are this kind of simulation type of games like train simulators and stuff like that, but I believe that the Victoria Free takes it to the such a high level it wasn't achieved before, and it has its issues. It's not the best game in the world for sure, but the thing they achieved with economics is marvelous. Is outstanding.
Yeah, I would have to agree on the basis of how good the economics of Victoria 3 is, just because you're actively seeing the supply and demand of what you are providing and affecting in the world, affecting your own market at home. And also, in order to get to the point where you're interacting with the world market or interacting with like a maybe you are maybe you start the game off as a country that's kind of like a vassal to a larger country. If you're included in their market, you're actively having to work your way into the trade of that market by seeing what the normal supply and demand is for a local economy within your country. And that stuff is so cool to me.
But do you have another game in mind that has this simulation going? Like really, I'm not because I guess sometimes games do supply and demand mechanic, but they kind of cheat. It's not applied like to the whole structure of the game, but often simulating in such a way when you are selling stuff, it's becoming cheaper to sell, like a scripted thing. And there's not much games that really simulate the whole world.
Yeah, I think really an important question there that I should have asked was, how do you feel? And let's just go ahead and get this out of the way. How do you feel about strategy games that tie not just the money, but resources into their economy? So you need maybe a little bit of both, or a lot of one and a little bit of another, or you can choose to spend just the money or the resources, the other random stuff that the game comes at you with.
So I have counter question to your question then, because I guess we should ask ourselves question: if the games have limited resources or it has unlimited resources. Because when it comes to strategy games, some of them has limited resources, like Warcraft 3. Then basically you cannot earn. Okay, it's not some economical type of game, but some games are done in such a way. For example, in Crusader Kings 2, the gold mines can deplete, and there's no more gold in your country. Yes, so it kind of changes the whole perspective of the resources. On the other hand, we have games like, for example, Hearts of Iron 4, when everything is unlimited when it comes to economies, and exchanging stuff is only type of contract that you are signing, and that's it.
Okay. So would you consider something like Heroes of Might and Magic or Spellforce? I think they have like the limited resource that you go and collect on the map, but they replenish after a while, right? Like is that an infinite resource or a limited resource to you? I guess it's another counter question.
I would say that they are kind of limited resource because if you are playing, I guess if you are playing in an intended way, you are earning much more from exploring the map than from a passive income. So I would say it's because this passive income is made so we are not blocked, I believe. Yes, so we are not getting into this corner that you are out of the resources. You can always get out of it. On the other hand, if you play it right, if you know the map or you scouted it, you can earn resources in such a quick way that passive income would take you the whole game to earn maybe, I don't know, half of it.
In that case, what it kind of made me think of as we were asking all these questions was Endless Legend 2 plays a lot like Civ. But what I
Yes.
liked about it, and we did an episode on this, the two of us, where we talked about
Yeah.
Heroes of Might and Magic and Endless Legend in the same episode. And what makes it interesting to me is Endless Legend plays like Civ, where there aren't usually limited resources. I guess Civ 6 and Civ 7 did this pretty well, where you can travel the map and encounter like villages, like the tiki
Yeah.
huts, or um, you can encounter wonders or something, and they give you
Yes.
a resource like science or whatever. I think what Endless Legend 2 did well was they used the resources as like tangible resources. There was some
Mhm.
more um, strategic resources was what they're called. And you can find them from traveling the world, so you get more that way, or you can passively earn them by actually farming them from tiles, if I remember correctly. So I like that there was a mix of that. I don't like that in Civ you're incentivized to travel the world, but you're mostly incentivized to just double down on the production within your borders, and then eventually the map gets discovered, so there's no reason to explore. I like that there was more of that in Endless Legends, so that's what comes to my mind. But when it comes to economies that I'm very fond of or remember very well, I think of like Tropico 5 because the caves, the mines were limited resources. You would place down a mine and you'd mine all of the coal or gold or iron, but you do earn money, kind of like Anno, from the individual houses, and then you end up reinvesting the money back into the island, and then eventually you have to just kind of continue exponentially increasing your means of production for what you're getting the gold or coal or whatever from, because eventually you're going to build like oil rigs and stuff. So I liked that.
But as far as I remember, Tropico is also a mixture of things that are unlimited and things that are limited. Do I remember it correctly?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Like I was saying, the mines themselves kind of run out, but there are other ways to obtain like gold and iron.
So I guess you brought up Anno, and this is the interesting example because it has. I'm thinking if it has any limited resources, but I believe it has unlimited resources, but it has supply and demand chain. But I don't know how far they push the simulation in terms of the simulating it or not just making it script wise, because I don't remember if it's really corresponds to the amount of the resources on the market or just you are selling a lot of something so it's becoming cheaper to buy, and if you are not selling anything it's more expensive. I don't remember.
I don't think it's the most advanced math, but I do think that it was based on supply and demand, because if I remember correctly, and I didn't play so much of Anno 1800, but I don't remember a big market, but I know that the individual islands, that the colonies can trade with each other. So you might start a trade deal where you're sending boats over to another island and you have to actively choose what resources enter that boat and then get taken to another port.
Yeah, exactly.
And the deal will only get accepted if the resources are something that that other colony actually needs. If they have too high of a supply of that and their demand is too low, they're not going to accept the entrance of your ferry of goods. But I do know that when it came to your local economy, it was affected by how much you generated, and then if the obviously if the other islands were producing more of a resource, it was just gone from the economy. From what I remember, like yours, there's no way you were trading it if somebody else was already generating it.
But one thing that also I wanted to ask you about the economics, because economic in the Victoria 3 is a different economics than, for example, in Hearts of Iron or Stellaris. And that's why, because in Victoria 3, the game is about economics. So we are buying stuff, and of course, you make stuff out of stuff in the production chain, but more or less dealing with items and warehouse and dealing with stocks is the core gameplay itself. On the other hand, in Stellaris or in Hearts of Iron, resources are only the means to achieve something. Yes, so you have enough, for example, in Stellaris, enough resource to build your fleet. Yes, as far as I remember, I don't remember how robust was it, but as far as I remember, it was kind of like that. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so you like in Stellaris, I think the best way to describe the differences between them is like other Paradox games, you you accrue your energy credits or your money based on the output from the individual buildings on your planets or from individual constructions on star bases, and you spend energy credits at any time on so okay, actually in the newest updates, I think the best way to describe it is you receive energy credits based on your trade value that is generated based on an estimation of your empire, and you receive energy credits from energy specific districts on your planet. So their only job is to generate energy that gets reinvested back into the economy, or the surplus goes into the bank, which is what you see in the corner for how much money you have. And then the way Stellaris works is everything costs money every month. So you are balancing how much you're generating versus how much you're building and how much the drain is.
So you see, this is the thing. It's the resources per se and the economy is not a gameplay itself. It's only a means or like a value that allows you or bans you for doing certain stuff. Yes. So for example, I play Hearts of Iron 4, and in there, if you don't have specific resource like oil, you can go with tags, and if you don't have it, you need to think of another way of dealing with stuff. Yes, so this is kind of like this meta value that allows you or like controls your gameplay, and I believe this is the Stellaris. And in, for example, in Anno or in Victoria 3, this is the part of the gameplay dealing with these resources. Yes, this is, of course, you need it in the production chain, but you can sell the resource. You can manufacture other resources from it. Probably in Victoria 3, you can flood the market with it in order to decrease the size and, for example, decrease the economy of one country because it relies on the price of one resource. Yes, this is also available strategy. This is also the different types of economics in games. Yes, it can be either I don't know, in Warcraft, in RTS games, in Warcraft 3, economics, and Starcraft, because I played Starcraft also. It is just a number that you need to count, or like at some point even like having in mind that okay, I can build a unit right now. I can build a unit right now. It's only the counter that basically shows you with the flow of time when you are available, when something is available to you, and you're making choice: should I wait for having something bigger available to me, or I'm using the thing right now. And there's not a lot of games that treat it as a gameplay feature.
The way I was describing it for Stellaris in my mind was basically like you were saying in Stellaris, you kind of, and this will sound backwards at first, but it's kind of like you use the people in Stellaris to generate your money. because there is no deficit in Stellaris. Sorry, there is a deficit, but there's no debt in Stellaris. You don't go into debt. You have to have a surplus of energy credits because either breaking even, which is very, very hard to do, or having a surplus, which is not that difficult to do, keeps things operating, keeps you generating money, keeps things functional. In Victoria, you're using the money to influence the people. So it's the other way around. You're not using the people to
Okay.
influence the money like in Stellaris. You're using the money to influence the people because in Victoria, you can go into debt. In fact, from an economical standpoint, making money in Victoria is kind of a bad thing. You don't want to be losing money, but you kind of want to break even at all times because that means that you're generating as much money as you are reinvesting back into your economy at any time. So being generally a few $1,000s in debt at any time because of the buildings that you're building or the plans that you have is a pretty good thing because it means that you're spending your money. You have no reason to just let money sit there because money not being spent is money basically just being misused. There's not really a whole lot of reasons to bank money in Victoria either. So I think in favor of what I'm saying, you use money a lot in Victoria to influence political parties, to pass laws, to better your country, to influence things so that you can discover new technologies, and so that you're using your money to build new buildings that appeases those political parties. So like at any time you're spending your money to influence the people of your country, and as the spirit of the nation, that's how you make things happen. In Stellaris, because you're like the spirit of an empire, you kind of have to be at a surplus because of, like you were saying, it's a means of production. You are using the money to at any time fund your ships. And if you ever go into a deficit, your ships just stop being as powerful. In fact, if you have a negative amount at any time in your bank account in Stellaris, it decreases the quality of your ships by like half or 25% or something, and it's enough to make you lose wars. So having a surplus at any given time is a good thing.
When you're talking about this, about basically treating money and resources as a mean that you shouldn't gather, you shouldn't spend it. Like gathering resources doesn't uh, doesn't really lead you anywhere. Yes, spending it is the thing that allows you to achieve something. And you see, I play, you probably see in background, I play lots of board games with my friends. And in board games, we usually say there are two ways of how economy works. One way is the same as video games, that you are trying to balance it out. So you always have money to spend, you always have availability to do something, but gathering the thing itself doesn't give you anything, basically. Yes. So you are, usually we say, if you are out of the resources but you finished your moves, you are good to go. It means you played your cards well, you made the right choices. Yes, like more or less. Of course, there are different nitpicks to everything, but let's leave it this way. But there are also board games that basically your goal is to gather resources. Like this is your pure, you can use them, but in the end of the game, you're counting the resources, and the more you have, the more points you get at the end. So I'm thinking about the video game that has this kind of attitude. Like it's really hard if you think of it. Like if there's an is there any game that your goal is just to get money or one resource?
I think it comes down to why you're kind of gathering it. I don't know that there's one where the goal is just to. So when you make me think of that, two things come to mind. One is Tropico, because Tropico, while you do want to spend the money to boost your economy, you can do pretty well by not growing that much. And you have a limited area to grow in the first place. In fact, the goal of the game is to reach a certain amount of money at any given time so that you can successfully survive to continue the game. Because if you don't have enough money by certain points, I believe you lose the game or you have wars called upon you. And the other thing it makes me think of actually is like Civ, because you may not need the money to win, even though you can get an economical victory. There's reasons why spending your money in Civ isn't always a good thing. You don't want zero money in Civ. You kind of want to just not fully bank it, but you don't always have reasons to spend your money in Civ. And then sometimes if somebody calls a war on you, you're going to want all of that money to quickly build troops or something.
Because you brought up Tropico, I haven't been playing like for ages this game. I don't remember what the goal of the gameplay is. But if you say money is the goal, so this is like I would say it's different than Civ because usually in games, the points that you are getting for doing stuff that are counted to the end of game, you most of the time you cannot spend on anything. You just gather them and then you count them, and then you're on a high score board and you can look at your high score. And this is the concept that, as far as I can hear, is in Tropico, that your goal is to achieve certain amount of money, but you can spend it. But if you think of it, in any other games, you usually you cannot spend the resource you are aiming to get. You know what I mean?
You're right. I think what it comes from in my game design mind is if there was a game where the goal was to make a certain amount of money, and part of the game was that you had to spend the money that you're supposed to be saving to win on things, it's a very, very simple design because ultimately there will always be a perfect recipe of things that you're supposed to
I see.
buy and then get money from in order to win. So it's kind of like we say it like chess before. I know you had an argument about chess in that one episode, but it's kind of like a solved game in the sense of
Yeah, I get it.
yeah, you're gonna have certain moves that absolutely make sense if you're spending the same money that you need to be saving.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right. But I thought of one other game that we haven't talked about during this episode, and I played a lot, and I just reminded myself about it because it was some quite ago, like I don't know, 5 6 years ago, and it's called Offworld Trading Company. Have you heard about it?
I have, yeah, it's on my wish list, I think, on GOG.
So man, it's a game about trading. Interesting fact, this is really good online game. Because the skirmish to play the game is like 20 minutes long, and it really feels like you are playing RTS game, but basically you're playing economy games. So everyone is gathering resources, the market is simulated in real time, and your goal is to bankrupt everyone. Yeah, this is an interesting one because in Victoria 3, economy is a huge part of the game, but it's not the only part of the game. And trading offward companies only about economy. Of course, you have technology and you have other stuff, but it means, for example, that you can I don't know, I don't remember quite how it works, but as far as I remember, for example, you have these intrigues that you can put to your opponent, but what it does, for example, it destroys their minds, so it's just for affecting economy of your opponent. Yes. And I played it a lot. I remember because I got it in the humble bundle once by accident because I wasn't even aiming to buy it, and I played it. And okay, my friends bought it too, so we played skirmishes, and man, we really liked it. And and one thing that I can tell you is that this game was crazy fast, crazy fast. I played StarCraft 2. I would even say that it wasn't so fast as StarCraft 2 in terms of things that are happening there, because economy is not a easy thing. Yes. So when there were, there are resources coming and going, stuff is happening, something is blowing up, I don't know, because it's on the plot is that you are building a base on the Mars, so the sun is going off because there are clouds, so the whole economy of power is collapsing, so we are trying to squeeze a little bit of other mines in order, like, this game was, I was so tired when I played this game, but I felt great. So maybe that's why we don't have much economy games.
Well, it's hard, right? Like it takes a lot
Yeah.
of math. When you talk about Stellaris, right? Like the big issue for that
Yeah.
has been population. They've had years and years of trying to figure out the best minds at Paradox working on Stellaris have been trying to figure out how to calculate the numbers that represent populations on planets within your empire, because that seems to be the root cause for why the game runs so badly in the last 100 years of the game. So the last third of the game, you reach the last third and then the game runs really, really badly, and it's because it's trying to calculate the number of people in your empire and what they're doing, what their job is, that kind of thing. And so while it's not super in depth, it used to be, and then they've slowly just made the calculation shorter and shorter and the equation smaller until eventually they just slap a number on it and they're like, okay, this represents your population. This single digit represents your population in the billions. Something like that, right? So it's not as simple now, but it is something that they've been dealing with for years. And so I think similarly for economies, Victoria 3 doesn't really have the same issue as far as like performance problems, but I know that they've adjusted the numbers for certain things in the economy because over time, certain things just get calculated differently. And you know, we brought it up. I brought it up at the beginning of the episode, but like Crusader Kings, we did a big episode on that before.
Yeah.
There's the economies are represented in single or double digits of gold, sometimes triple digits. But grand weddings, big events are usually just double digits of gold, which is really years of investing of your time, but it's just the scale of the economy. It probably helps a lot with performance because they've got so many other things that they're actually simulating and it makes sense historically. But it's so interesting to me because of the scale difference. You are effectively probably making lots of money like another Paradox game, but it's represented so much smaller. It reminds me a lot of like not a strategy game, but playing Red Dead Redemption. Like you play Grand Theft Auto and you have millions of dollars in your account, and then you play Red Dead Redemption, and Arthur Morgan is the richest cowboy in the world, walking around with
Yeah.
like $300. And I mean that it's enough to buy everything in the game, kind of. So it's like it's just the scale, the way the economy's worked. If you eliminate inflation or roll it back, kind of thing.
But when you talk about the games that has this, let's call it approach to resource goal approach to resources, not as a game itself, but treat them as a mean to approach something. Usually, when you talked about Crusader Kings and Stellaris, it got me that usually this type of games have one resource that is not a mean to for you to achieve a goal, but it's the thing that's limiting you, so you cannot achieve the goal. So, for example, in Hearts of Iron 4, this is the population because okay, it grows, but it grows by such small amount that basically when you are out of people at your country because basically due to the wars you lost everyone, it's basically game over for you. You don't have you cannot go any further. Yes, this is the resource that is limiting you. And I was thinking about other games. So Victoria 3 the same. Population is also kind of the limiting factor. Yes, that if you start as small country, it's really hard to grow your population. It's easier than in Hearts of Iron, but not much. I would say that in Crusader Kings, this is not population. I wouldn't say so. It's much more geography itself. It's limiting you. You cannot get if you are in a specific place. You cannot achieve because it's not okay. You can do world conquest, but this game is all about relations. So if due to the cultural scope of your kingdom, you cannot achieve certain things. Yes. So I wonder what's the limiting factor in Stellaris. What would you say is it?
Well, what you're saying is kind of interesting to me because I know the way in Victoria they limit you is you have money, and this isn't the only limiting factor. You're right. It is population. It's also like bureaucracy. So if you don't have
Oh yeah,
enough
yeah,
government
exactly.
administration buildings,
Yes,
you don't have enough authority.
yes.
In Crusader Kings, they do a system that I'll bring up again for Stellaris that's kind of interesting where you can either spend your limited amounts of gold because you really don't make that much, and you can either spend your gold or you can spend your piety, so your religion points, or you can spend your I forget what it's called, but you can spend your prestige, which is like your royalty points. So if you have fame to your family, and if you have religious backing
Wait,
to your
wait, wait.
family,
Isn't prestige also points in Crusader Kings?
yeah,
Okay, so you see, this is the type of game. You have points that you can spend because you can spend prestige, as far as I remember.
yeah, they're like alternative currencies.
Yeah.
You're choosing whether to spend gold or spend prestige or
Yes.
spend piety. And so if you lean into one or the other, you can generate way more of them than you do gold. So that's kind of how it makes sense, right? It's how they get you. It's like everybody generates gold, but you could be a more famous king or a more religious king, spiritualistic king, and you'll effectively gain what you need. You'll effectively gain what you need from doing that. In Stellaris, the way they do it is you can generate your empire has to generate money, which is energy credits. It has to generate depending on the empire, but 90% of them need to generate minerals and they have to generate food. What Stellaris does is they give you a market from the beginning of the game doesn't really make a lot of sense. But they give you a market where if you ever run low on money, you just sell your excess minerals and sell your excess food to get money. And depending on the supply and demand, it changes how much you can sell them for. But when you're in a tight spot, you can sell your minerals and your food for money. And so as long as you have a surplus of these things, which is your goal is to always have a surplus, be generating more and filling your bank account, then you can sell them for more money when you're in a tight spot or a war has just started or you need to build more things. So they do a system differently across all three of those games, but I just think it's interesting because Crusader Kings gives you the option of spending those things outright, and Stellaris says you need to convert them to money. You need to sell them for money.
So you see, this is an interesting thing in Hearts of Iron, though, because the market you are talking about in Stellaris is also available in Hearts of Iron, but this market is associated also with countries. So, for example, if there is no country that want to buy stuff, it's lacking because basically everything there is based on kind of contracts. Like if someone is lacking something, you can give him what he's lacking in order to get him from him what he has surplus of. Yes, but due to this fact, in a certain position of time and conflicts and stuff like that, you won't be able to get resource to just buy a resource. Like it's not available to you because, for example, you have a war with Philippines and they have lots of rubber. Yes, so you cannot basically you cannot get rubber even if you are swimming in money. You cannot get rubber. Yes, and this is the case. Like interesting, yeah. So every part of the game has its own quirks about economy. And I wonder how is it in Cities Skylines. I don't remember. I only played a couple of hours of it, but isn't like money is you like is the thing that's flowing in and out, and this is like the only resource? I don't remember.
Yeah, the thing about it's kind of you have two resources being population and money, but you don't worry about the population. It just naturally occurs as you build your city, but you need to build your city effectively, which is the main point of the game anyways, in order to maintain your money because if you build apartment buildings and you build jobs for those people in those apartments and it's logistically fine for them to get there and they're not sick because of bad placement of public health or garbage waste area, then they'll naturally generate money for you from taxes. And you can even change the taxes, but I don't usually ever do that in City Skylines. It's just a matter of if you start to design a city poorly and they get sick and then they don't go to work and then those apartments get abandoned, then you're not generating money and you're losing it. So because a lot of times, right, people might play City Skylines by individually placing buildings. For the most part, you're painting a district and then the buildings naturally pop up. So if you naturally pop up buildings, you're going to naturally start earning money from the area. But if people aren't happy with where they're living and then they start abandoning the houses and eventually you're losing money, you go, why am I losing money? And then you look around everywhere and then you find a whole neighborhood that you built next to a garbage waste center and they all complain that it smells bad. And that's why they left, and then nobody's living in the area to go to work to make money, and then now you're losing money. So it's kind of that's the management, the strategy of City Skylines. I don't know. If Al was here, he'd tell us way better with his 6,000 hours.
Okay, so I have different question for you because there are also I would split strategy games, and I maybe this, maybe that's not true for video games, but I know it from board games. But I would say it's kind of true too. And like because you can split games into two different way. You can split. One way is the games that you have usually surplus of resources, and why and other games you are always dealing with lacking of resources. So what type of gamer are you? Which one do you prefer? Lacking of resources and keeping with always being low on everything and making as much as you can out of it, or games that you are overflowing with stuff, you are spending it, and usually okay sometimes it's you are out of the resource, but after a minute it's you are already full of it, so it's like always type of thing like dynamic increase of resource that allows you to just leave them as a mean to do other stuff. So what type of gamer are you?
I'm definitely a gamer of the first type. I like it when you have little resources because I feel like not only does it teach you how to play the game, but it makes sense to me. If you have excess resources, I have no idea. I'm not that smart. I have no idea if I should be building one of these buildings that the game is suggesting that I build, or I'm supposed to be building six of them. Because you know what I'm talking about when you play a strategy game and you're trying to learn how to play, and the game in the tutorial tells you they go, now you need to build a brick hut and it will make bricks, and then you build one, and then an hour later you have your economies crashing and you're like, what did I do wrong? I'm playing the tutorial, how did I fail this? And then you watch a YouTube video and then you watch them play the tutorial and they build like 12 brick huts and you're like,
Yeah.
at no point did they tell me. I did this with Anno because in Anno you have all this money.
Exactly. Anno is full of this kind of tips, like build this one and then build this one, and it's like, man, what is happening? And then you calculate stuff. It's like, no, I should build 3 of this one and maybe 1 of this one and 6 of this one in order to have my economy flowing. You are right.
Absolutely. But the thing is, right, is I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm so worried that I'm gonna build 3 or 6 brick huts and then I'm gonna build
Yeah.
like 12 of these of the clay pits in order to get the
Yeah.
clay to build the bricks, and the supply works out in my head, and then you go back and then you have like a majority brick-based economy. I don't want to be a brick-based economy. How did I build these buildings that make sense and then now I'm only generating bricks, or like everything else is suffering? So I like it when they don't give you that many resources because then you're looking at everything and you don't have that many options. You can't just build freely. So the moment you start getting things, you're like, okay, I just unlocked a brick hut, but I can't afford that. We're a few years away from having bricks, people. We have to go back to the roads. So let me go back to the buildings that make the roads, or the buildings that, like, I need more couriers huts to plan the logistics of items moving. So let me build more of these, or I need more warehouses. So like you kind of skimp and you're frugal and you try to save up for certain things. I like that because then eventually you get the economy flowing and then you have all this excess and now you know how to play the game, and then that's more satisfying. I don't like the Victoria where they give you money at the start and then your economy fails after like an hour and you're like, what am I doing wrong?
So okay. So I totally agree with you. But if you think it, because your favorite game is Stellaris, as far as I know, that's one of the best game you've been playing in your life. But Stellaris is the second type of game, I would say, because you always have resources at some form. You can buy them. You always have a choice, and this is not the main issue of the game, I would say.
Yeah, but I would say that that one is different because, like I was saying with Victoria, your goal is kind of to not make money. You want to balance it out where you're like, if you're making money, you're kind of playing it wrong. In Stellaris, if you enter with that mindset, you're not going to succeed because Stellaris rewards you and expects you to have as much money as many of all of the resources coming in as much as possible. So the more you have that you're not spending is kind of a good thing because you're going to constantly run into problems where that costs you money, and if you don't have an emergency fund, you're going to suffer. And so not only that, but like the more resources you have, there's no reason. So I think a good way to put it is Stellaris balances their economy so that everything that you build costs you money every month. So the more stuff you have, the more money you end up spending every month, and you cannot keep up with that calculation. It's just more human. It makes more sense to not build as much as you can and sit on your money so that you can better know how much is actually coming out of your pocket every month. Because if you start building everything wildly, you'll watch that number jump from like a couple hundred that you're making every month to negative a couple hundred, and you're like, whoa, what did I change? It's because I chose to build 50 ships, right? And all of those ships cost me money every month. So it's really a situation of sitting on your money is a good thing. And also, yeah, like you were saying, it's a very different experience because it's not about balancing it. It's about sitting on your money, and it's also about there's so little things in the game that make you money that it's not like Victoria or
Yeah,
or Anno, where like the first time I played Anno, Adam,
yeah,
I played the game and I was enjoying it. I was a few hours in, I was building up my towns, and I'm like, why do I have no money? Like, I'm building all these buildings. I had no
Exactly.
idea that the houses make the money. I thought it was the buildings and the people. And so I'm like, I need to just make as many houses as possible.
In the oldest installment of Anno 1602, they forgot to put it in a tutorial, and it was this was the I was really young then. I haven't been playing lots of games. I didn't know how it worked, and I was lost. I was like, what I'm doing wrong? Why I don't have money in this game? And you start with plenty of it. You start with really big amount comparing to other stuff. Like you can spend in it on everything basically until a certain point when you are lacking it. And I remember I was always asking myself when I was young, like, what I'm doing wrong, why I'm always lacking it. But as you said, if you learn Anno, maybe by trial and error, or you read it in on watch it on YouTube, you learn this kind of stuff that houses make you money, and the system is based in such a way that the it's kind of the loop of the game, yes, because houses make you money. They make you more money if the citizens are more in favor of you. In order to make them favorable, you need to have different materials. You need to cope with their needs. When you're coping with their needs, they evolve into second stage of citizen. And this second stage citizen have even more needs, but you need more money in order to build this kind of needs because you're building everything with money. So this is this kind of loop and the game is based off, yes. So it's the thing that pushes you to produce more other stuff. But I would say yes. Yeah, this is an interesting concept. I haven't thought about it before.
Now, there was another game I wanted to talk about, which I think we'll save for a bigger episode for everything else. But what I thought would be interesting to talk about is I don't know how much Civ 6 you played, but Civ 7 puts a bigger emphasis on the idea of an economy. And that is something I really enjoyed from playing Civ 7. In Civ 6, there are diplomacy points. I'm trying to remember how exactly it worked because it's not been long since I've played Civ 6. But I know the money in Civ you mostly use to buy tiles to expand your city when you don't wait for the population to grow, or you use it to spend on buildings or units to bypass production. So you kind of use money like gold to just bypass production or population growth, really. In Civ 7, so another way to describe this too, right, is in Civ 6 and the rest of the Civ games, they describe Civs as one of like three. You have either a production Civ that's really good, with their perks are really good for producing things quickly. You have civs that are good for science, so they're really good for going down the tech trees. And you have civs for spiritualism, where they're really good for leaning into religion and influencing population growth in that way. In Civ 7, they introduce way more concepts. There are civs that are types, they're always two types. It's like Pokemon. You have an economic expansionist civ. So those are two new ones, which they're the same concepts, but they actually tell you now. They're like, hey, this civ isn't good for, they don't have a production one now. It's just science because science is considered production. But they go, you have an economic scientific civ, or you have a scientific military civ. You have a militaristic expansionist civ. And the thing is that they're right because the perks lean into that. But what I like is I mostly played Civ 7. Many games of Civ 7 in a row as an economic civ. You are building buildings that generate money, producing resources that generate money, and expanding quickly, and it's giving you lots of money. You can choose money as a reward for doing quests in Civ 7. You can choose money as a reward for celebrations, which are a new mechanic when you hit population milestones. So the game is constantly feeding you money, and you're like, what do I need all this money for compared to previous Civ games? And it's not uncommon now for you to finish a Civ 7 game and have somewhere around like 1,000 gold being generated a month.
Jack, you sound like you are living in a country that's a core of capitalism. Wait, you are. So maybe that's why.
Look, I didn't sit here and say I love money, money, money.
Yeah, it's not like money, 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 money. No, of course, I'm joking. I'm joking. I totally feel you. You see, one thing that I remember from the reviews when this game was out is that usually I played Civ 4, 5, and 6. Majority of my playtime was Civ 5, then Civ 6, and Civ 4. And usually you had your civilization that had some certain focus on specific stuff. Yes, so I don't know. There were Aztecs who were good at gathering food, probably from hills and stuff like that. But there were nomads who were good at gathering money from deserts. I don't remember quite the which nation was doing, but there were some small quirks about each of them that made you do some things in a game. Also, each time you played, the map was generated, as in usual in every Civ game. And due to the fact that you didn't know if, for example, you started, you could set it up so it's not this way, but usually you could even start surrounded by deserts, and you were the civilization that wasn't prepared for that. Yes, because you were a civilization that was mainly I don't know, mainly focused on water and stuff around it. And one of the thing that civilization games were all about was dealing with the situation. So you are focused on one stuff, but you are in dire situation and you need to somehow cope with it. Like, life is not always roses. And as far as I remember about these reviews, they often said that in Civ 7, civilization had much more different ways to play them, as you talked about it. For example, money, you can focus on earning money. But due to this fact, at some point, it could be completely not possible for you to cope with a certain situation because they were so focused on a specific side of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think that there's what maybe this has changed since launch too. But I feel like Civ 7 not only gives you more ways to start a match, like you have more options. You can, because as you know, Civ 7's big issue for many people was not only do you choose a Civ now, but you also choose a leader. So you can choose a leader from any other Civ and play as any other Civ, which recently has been for ages. So like you can in the antiquity age, the beginning of the game, you can only choose an antiquity Civ and an antiquity leader. So you can combine those two, right? So there's not only more options for how to start the game, including that, there's also these things called mementos. There's these memento points now that let you. They're like, it's hard to describe, but they're like account permanent skill points that you can choose to use at the start of the game. So there's a lot of options now to start the game, yes. What I like about Civ 7 is that they give you more options when the game is going across all three ages, all the way to the end of the game, for how to respond to situations. So you don't really feel like you're stuck as one thing. And eventually, when the age changes, you can just change the Civ that you're playing. So if you started, so a very specific example is the Maya civilization is very good for coastlines. So if you play them, then you want to get on a coastline so you generate more gold. If you spawn in the desert nowhere near the coast and you still have not found the coast, and then you reach the exploration era where you're incentivized to go explore the oceans and find a new continent, and you're still in the desert, then by the time you reach the exploration age, you should switch to a civ available to you that will benefit from being in the desert or not needing the coast.
You see, from the game design perspective, I'm not an expert, but I feel that it kind of is this design make it so that it's really important to choose well. On the other hand, it flattens the game design because if if choosing the proper faction for specific situation is a way to go, if you choose not well, you're as maybe it changed, but reviewers often said that choosing not well means sometimes basically you are not able to cope with anything. And when you have this different concept that you had, I don't know, 50 civilization to choose from, you choose one and it stayed with you, even if the state of your placement of your initial city wasn't proper and stuff like that, you had to somehow cope with this situation. The whole design of the game was made in such a way that the trades you got were meaningful, but not meaningful enough to break your game. And that's the difference between 6.7 and 6.6, as far as I read from reviews. I played 6 Civ and 5, and I know that for example, I got Civ that were good in mountains, and I had desert civilization, and I managed to cope with it. In the end of the game, I managed to get to the region where there are mountains, and at some point I got all the bonuses I wanted to get, but I wasn't blocked. And as far as remember reviewers were going, they often said you could get blocked because you choose wrong, or randomly it was chosen for you.
I mean, you're right, but it's the same thing where often if I'm playing multiplayer Civ 7 and I know I'm going to eventually have to fight my friends or deal with them in some way, I'll choose a Civ that's good for mountains and I'll end up in a desert with no mountains. But the thing is, I think that they've made the game design more complex. Like if we go back to the water, I know this isn't about economies. We'll bring it back. Um, when you think about civs for water, like I mentioned before, the Maya civilization does really well on coastlines. Civ 7 adds in a new mechanic called navigable rivers. So they're rivers like normal, like you remember in Civ 6 and Civ 5, there were rivers that went through the continent.
Yes,
Those are
exactly.
still there. The new rivers are now big enough that you can move troops down the rivers and you can build the count as tiles. I guess another good way to describe it is you know how in chess, if you're not the side that goes first, you're at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
In Civ, if you start a game and you're not on the coast, but you're a few tiles away, if you can see the coast, but you're too far away, and you have to move your settler instead of settling in the first turn, you're at an inherent disadvantage compared to the people in multiplayer. That's just the case because the turn that you're using to move to start your first city is a turn that they've already started theirs and are now researching something or producing another unit. In Civ 7, if you start a few turns away from the ocean, but you're on a navigable river, you can settle your city and then all of the navigable rivers connect to the ocean or to a major lake. So you can always settle on a navigable river and then send your units like from a dock into the ocean a few tiles away. So you can traverse them with naval ships. You can traverse them with most of your ships or troops in general. All I'm trying to say is there's more options. So even if you never settle on a mountain as a mountain civ, you're still fine. The way this plays back into the economy is there are so many options to make money in Civ 7, and money has so many more uses now, or a few more uses, I should say, to be realistic, that if you are a Civ that needs mountains and you don't have any mountains, you can still use the other perks of your city or the perks of your leader, which might have nothing to do with mountains. There might be a completely different situation and make money somehow. And you can still spend your money to get ahead. I think a good example is like I like to use the Mississippian Empire, which is expansionist economic, and they give you bonuses for. I'll give you a better example. The Mayan Empire, which I was just saying, or the Marian Empire, I can't remember which one. The Mayan Empire. They're the ones that do really well on the coast. They make money from coastal tiles. I like to play that empire, and I like to play as the Roman leader because they make more money from towns and they make less money from cities. So what I'll do is I will send out as many settlers as possible to make new towns, and the towns generate me money, and I'm making more money from the coast. So it synergizes, right? Like the leader and the civ that are not usually together work together so that I make more money from those things. And later on, you can actually change the town focus the way you could choose city focuses where they would like choose the right tiles. Now it's a completely different system where if you choose a focus, it just inherently gives you different things. So you can change a town focus to be a resort town, and resort towns generate more money on the coast. So now it all comes back together to work together in a way. And the thing is, right, there's so many different little systems that work together now that you can actually work on your economy even if you're at a disadvantage. There's more options to play with to build well past the initial building of your cities kind of thing.
You talked about these options that money give you in Civ 7, that it's much more robust than in previous installment. But my last question to you about economics and the topic I want to touch is on the other way end of the spectrum. There are also two type of games in the mental of money. There are type of games that you have money and that you don't have money. And this is the concept of the strategy games particularly because, for example, I play lots of Oxygen Not Included. This is the game of simulation of the colony. And then you don't have any resource that you would treat as money. Because usually, maybe not usually, but most of the times in the video games, if you have money, money is kind of a joker. Like in Civ 7, because you can spend money in order to do stuff that you can do otherwise, but money is this way of overriding the rules. Yes. So, for example, in Stronghold games, you could build units with resources, or you can buy resources for money and just buy a unit for it. Yes. So this shortens your supply chain. Yes. In Civ 5 and 6 and probably 7, you can speed up development of everything using money. In Crusader Kings 2, you played 3, but probably it's the same. You can spend money on certain edicts that's basically can really boost you. So usually money is this kind of the way out of the certain situation, is a thing that you can keep maybe for later, but there are games that you don't have money. So my question for you is, which one you prefer? I can only say for myself that I like second one, because sometimes for me it really, I really feel that the money is a cheap game design in terms of like it leaves the authors of the game the way of not perfecting it so much, because always there's some money that you can spend to deal with it. But usually, I mean not usually, but often I feel it's not a proper way to play strategy games. It's like a cheap way out of certain situations.
I might be in the first camp because I like it when you start off with no money. If there's multiple resources and there's not money, I feel like you're the focus of the game is something different, right? Like if there's other resources that aren't money, they usually want you to get 3 or 4 of them to do everything, maybe 1 or 2, and the focus is on the things that you're building and the things that they do. And I really like that. But I do like when you start a game and you have less money, like we were saying before, and you're limited and you're having to pick and choose, because eventually you get the satisfaction of watching your economy grow until you can do multiple things at once. It's like it teaches you to be single-minded and then become multitasking. What I don't like is games where they want you to start collecting multiple resources from the get-go, because it presents the same problem that having a bunch of money at the beginning does, right?
Well, it depends, because if you have colony simulators I play, sometimes they give you abundance of resources, but each of them has their own nitpicks and the small things about them that you start the game, you get certain resources, and you need to deal with the situation because you don't have this resource, but you have this resource, and deal with it. Somehow you need to manage with the situation. Like in Civ, you manage with the surroundings of your starting location. Yes, you start in the desert. Well, here you go. You need to deal with the basically no food situation. But the thing you mentioned is really interesting, because you also mentioned money as a way to count your success.
Yeah,
The
kind
type
of,
of
yeah.
score, yeah, because you see there's more and more of it. You spend more and more, but this is kind of the thing the Anno is doing, because you get more and more money. The amount is rising really high. But on the other hand, you spend more and more. So in the end, you stay on the same level, basically. Like in real life, mate. Like in real life, you earn more money, you spend more money. That's how it goes.
That's true.
One thing I got from this episode, Jack, is that you are a capitalist from USA. I can really feel it.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah, you're all about money and business. I always felt it.
No, I'm about culture and history, which we have tons of here in the US.
Man, in Europe we are about culture. No, of course, I'm joking.
Thank you everyone for listening to Adam and I ramble about virtual economies that don't even exist except for in our hearts. If this is your first time listening to a Critical Moves episode, then please run over to YouTube where you can watch the video versions of these episodes. We release an episode every Friday on a strategy topic that either we choose or our lovely community chooses in our community Discord. You can also go to criticalmovespodcast.com where we have a old school forum where you can also interact with us and suggest people to talk to and interview or strategy game topics. If this is, again, your first time listening, you can find other episodes on streaming platforms that carry podcasts. And when you go to the YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe so that you can keep up with the future episodes that come out every Friday. And if you're a returning listener, thank you so much for supporting the podcast. That's it from Adam and I. See you guys next time.